Joffe, the general partner of Hacks. So he will talk to us about glitter or gold, identifying and maximizing the potential of early-stage hardware startups. So let us give him a warm applause. A big applause.
Well, thanks for coming today. I hope you had the chance to see the show. I just went around the startup booth. I find it's quite interesting, actually, to come here. Show after show, you see the progression of the quality of the supply chain. You see technology becoming gradually more and more commoditized by all those Shenzhen, Dongguan, and all those China-based companies who can actually do better and better things year after year. And that puts a lot of pressure on startups, on investors like us, to find things that are actually defensible long-term to become their own thing, their own big company. So my presentation today is about identifying and maximizing the potential of early-stage startups. So to get started, I'm not sure how much time we'll have for questions. I have got a lot of stuff in there. So if you want to ask me some questions, can send to Twitter. I'll reply, and to my email as well. So first, I'd like to say, for hardware and IoT, we're really living amazing times. It has never been so easy to actually build things and smart things. And I would say, I used to work in software, worked in telecom, worked in gaming. And what I see with hardware is that it's a really new impact on the world. In a way, there's things that just apps can't do. Changing the physical world and changing or impacting the human body. So that's really unprecedented, and it's amazing. To tell you a bit more about what we do, so part of Hacks. Hacks is part of a fund called SOSV, which is a global fund of a bit more than $200 million. And you might not know that brand because pretty much a B2B brand, but it's today the third most active seed fund in the world, and the most active for hardware and for life science. So at Hacks itself, we have two main branches. The first branch is in Shenzhen, so the Silicon Valley for hardware, right? And there, we bring startups from around the world to help them go from an early prototype to their first product. We have another branch in San Francisco called Hacks Boost, focused on helping startups go to scale, go from 1 to N. So far, since we started, we invested in over 160 hardware startups, which is quite a large number. In terms of origin, even though we're based in Shenzhen principally and also in San Francisco, actually about half of our startups come from US and Canada, and they come over from Silicon Valley and other places to Shenzhen because they understand this is where the resources are for what they want to do. We do B2B and B2Cs. Those are the categories we cover, so lifestyle products, health tech, robotics, infrastructure, and fabrication tools like Industry 4.0 kind of things. Those are the startups that are already having good results with valuations between $10 and $50 million, with a growth curve that actually we compared to Fitbit, and they actually went faster than Fitbit. Some of them, like MakeBlock, have sales in, I think this year is about $20 million, 250 people. Those companies are doing well. So back to the presentation, I actually almost titled it The 4 Steps to the Hardware Startup Epiphany, because there's really 4 quite distinct steps to make things happen successfully in hardware. And I'll go through those steps here. The first one is checking that you have the team, you have the tech, you have a prototype that works. So you heard that in the previous talk about pitching. You want to have all this doing well. So you want a complete team that covers all the bases from electronics, mechanical, software, design, business. Sometimes you just have 2 or 3 people to do all of this. Large market, ideally yes. In some cases, teams come with a very advanced new technology that they developed, and they don't necessarily have a very clear idea of the market. And in some cases, we actually work with them to figure it out. Proof of concept, it's really important to have that, because everybody has ideas, but not so many people actually do something about it or make something. And the 10x advantage is what will attract investors. Like What do you do that's much better? Are you much cheaper? Are you much faster? Are you much higher quality? This 10x advantage can come in different forms, can come in the form of science. This is particularly true for health tech startups. Software, this is very true for robotics, where very often the idea is to take off-the-shelf components, assemble a new robot for a particular function, and then it will all be about computer vision, navigation, pathfinding, map making, these type of things. So this is the 10x advantage very often in robotics, and in some cases community that you assembled to either contribute to your product or to give you data that can help make it better. So those are kind of the three different distinct things. And what's interesting here is that it's kind of a new way of thinking about IP. People ask us all the time, oh, you're in Shenzhen, how about all those copycats? How about all those Chinese factories want to rip you off, copy your startups? Well, the reality is that if they don't have the science, or if they don't have the software capabilities, like, do they have robotics engineers who can actually do, computer vision and stuff like that at an advanced level? If they can't, they can copy the box, won't do anything, right? And as for building community, it goes along building a brand, building supporters, and that's not something that factories know how to do. So actually, so far out of our 160 startups, the only one that got copied is actually a Chinese startup, the MakeBlock robotics company. And they got copied, but it doesn't mean the copy is good. And it doesn't mean that they're not doing fantastically. They already have 250 staff, and they're growing very fast. The copycat just try to copy the product, but they don't have a brand. So the second step is positioning. Is, you could say, building the right thing. So when you talk to startups and in startup world, you hear often like, oh, you should, follow your passion. So that's great as a start because you need to motivate yourself to do something, right? So follow something you're interested in, of course. But then how about your passion? Where does it lie? If you split things around like, this is a zone of your interests, your passions, this is the market, and those are your skills. And you can see some areas a bit problematic, right? In particular, if you're here, well, you have the skills, there's a market, but you're not interested. So that's not your startup. It's not something you want to do. If you're interested, there's a market, but you don't have the skills, well, either you find co-founders or you staff up, or it's just not you. If there's no market, it's a hobby. So you want to find that intersection. But within that intersection, there can be many different things. And I'll give some examples. Maybe you heard also in the startup world about this word pivot. So you have this startup, you have this concept, and then you try it, and then the market tells you they don't want it, and you adjust it. But then if it changes into something you're not interested in, how do you pivot your passion? That's a bit challenging, right, for founders. How do you do that? Well, it turns out that founders typically are somewhere on this spectrum between artists. They have this mission in life, they have this vision, they want to just do this or nothing else. And there's pure business people. They're like, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll do whatever works, actually. You tell me that my idea to do like green technology doesn't have like a future. The market tell me that. If it can be something that helps construction business, okay, I'll do that, no problem. So the founders are somewhere on that spectrum. And what we try to do as investors is work with them to find the best overlap between the market, their interests, and their skills in a way that makes sense to maximize that opportunity. Now, in terms of where do you want to be as a startup, probably you don't want to be doing what the majority of the people here are doing, which is here, Xiaomization. You're familiar with Xiaomi. They took a bunch of products, make them connected, cheaper, sell direct, and now they're undercutting everybody, they're killing everybody. Once you have an activity tracker that costs $10, why would you ever buy a Fitbit for $100? $10, you get more or less the same thing, and even 30 days battery. So as a startup, you don't want to be there. You don't want to be competing with Xiaomi. You don't necessarily want to be there either, where things are very high tech and very slow. Like people like, if you're familiar with like Boston Dynamics, the big robots, crazy things by Google, this is too long, too expensive for a startup, unless you have really wealthy friend and lots of connections in the first place. As a startup, you want to be in that sweet spot in the middle where It's not too crazy complicated, it's not rocket science, but it's hard enough. And you can protect it with the software. These type of things. So positioning is after that is within your category, how can you be standing out on differentiating? If you do an activity tracker today, how are you going to stand out? Will you have like forever battery? Do people really care about having more accurate? Like I think one activity tracker was like around here, the world's most accurate activity tracker. I don't care. Maybe some people do. Maybe for some activities they do. Maybe there's a market that's specific for that. But do I care if it counts like 1 or 2 more steps a day? I don't know. Right? So positioning is actually difficult. And what we do in some cases with our startup, with our startups, is help them reposition. And that's generally a bit of a painful work because they have this idea. They came to us thinking that they're just going to do that. So they join us in Shenzhen. They plan to spend 4 months executing on that. And within the first week or 2, we tell them, look, maybe not so great your idea. We like your team. We like your technology. We like the market you're targeting. But the way you're doing it, the features you're thinking about, maybe not so great. I'll give some examples. So going through examples. So in the category lifestyle products, there's audio and video. Talk about this one. It's a company called Neura. And what those guys found out, they have a team that basically, they are experts in acoustics and hearing, like hearing science. One of their co-founders is actually an ear surgeon. He's also a firmware engineer. Some people have a lot of talents, right? Like that guy, Luke. What they found out is that all people have a different hearing profile. We hear differently. So some of us hear very well low tones, a little bit less mid tones, better high tones. We're all different. But we all listen to the same sound source, right? We don't so we all hear a distorted version of what we're supposed to hear. And there's nothing you can do about it because we don't know our hearing profile. So they found a way to basically get people's hearing profile in 1 minute by putting a little microphone. And the way it works, put a little microphone in your ear. So when you listen to something, it goes into your cochlea, goes into your brain, signal comes back. And when the signal comes back, actually your ear emits a faint sound. That's called autoacoustic emissions. It's a natural phenomenon, but if you measure the difference between the sound that comes back and the sound that went in, you can actually get the full hearing profile. So normally this is done in hospitals, in acoustic labs with big machines. They managed to make it really small with incredible signal processing. And they were like, okay, what do we do? Do we do earphones? Do we do headphones? Initially they want to do earphones because they need something in the ear. But then we look at the market and say, what's the most famous earphone out there? Couldn't come up with a name. Like everybody's doing earphone and nobody's doing earphone. Headphones is easy. You say Beats, you say whoever, Bose. There's some big brands. The market for headphones is much bigger than the market for earphones. But they needed something in the ear. So like, okay, well, maybe we could do a kind of a hybrid. So they make this crazy thing, a hybrid headphone, earphone, where you have a little pod that goes, kind of floats in your ear, and you have the cup of the headphone on top. And that actually allowed them to do better things. In addition to being able to do this personal equalizer, what that allowed them to do is to separate the high tones and the mid tones, what typically drowned by the bass when it's emitted from the same source. So they deliver the bass through the cup, so you have fantastic sound and crystal clear on all frequencies and adapted to your hearing. It's a crazy product. So they went on Kickstarter and they raised 1.8 million, worked pretty well. #1 Kickstarter from Australia. And now they're getting ready to get to market. Another one that's quite interesting is this in the pet and family tech category. So if you go around, you probably saw stuff like that, right? Kids smartwatches. Who needs another kid smartwatch? They all do the same stuff. GPS, of course, watch. Sometimes voice communication, sometimes even video calls. And the guys that we picked to invest in, they came in and they had all those ideas too. And they had other ideas. They were like, oh, we want to do GPS, we want to do voice communication, but we also want to do like some kind of icon, like some icon notifications, because it's for kids that are very small, don't know how to read, so they understand icons. So we talked to them. We said, look, we know everybody's doing GPS, we know everybody's doing voice smartwatch. We're kind of questioning whether that's actually a good idea. Because how often do you really need to know where your kid is when your kid is less than 6-year-old? When your kid is less than 6-year-old, most of the time the kid is not alone. You're going to use that function how many times a year? Very few. And in terms of voice communication, are you going to call your kid at school during the day? Are they going to call you at work? Like, what's the idea here? So they were a bit shaken, and we told them, talk to your customers, like see what they actually need. Like, do they actually do those behaviors or don't? And we told them, look, the problem is that your product as it stands doesn't pass the toothbrush test. The toothbrush test is your product has to be somewhat useful a couple of times a day. And the GPS, not useful a couple of times a day, maybe a couple of times a year. The voice communication may be the same. They wanted to do also location-based games. Like, it's so interruptive. How are you going to set that up? It's like a paintball game. So we said, think about what could be useful every day, even a little bit. People perceive something as more useful if they use it every day. It doesn't matter if it's very useful. So they did that, and what they came back with was that, yeah, people don't need GPS. People don't need voice communication. People don't need location-based games. But they love the icons. They love the icons because those can act as reminders. Parents tell their kids every day, remind them of a billion different things. Brush your teeth, take your bag, get ready for school. It's playtime. It's the beginning of playtime, end of playtime. It's lunchtime, it's dinner time, it's story time. There's all those things in the life of the kid that are annoying for parents to remind the kid of, and the kid also hates it to be ordered around, right? So eventually, they focused on that. They dropped, so that allowed them to kick out a lot of the technology that wasn't useful anymore. So they kicked out the radio module, they kicked out the GPS, so they could do a product that was really, really cheap. So that's what they did. And they went on Kickstarter and raised close to $800,000. And the parents love it. And they got even like feedback from parents of kids who have like ADHD, autistic parents, people who know autistic adults, seniors who say, those people need structure in their day. They need those reminders. That would be fantastic for my grandpa, would be fantastic for my whatever. So better positioning by less features. And the benefit of dropping a lot of those functions is that they actually manage to do a cheaper product, and they'll be able to ship much faster. So, anyone wants to buy one here? Somebody with kids? No? It's pretty cheap. All right. And as you can see, this one is very low tech on the hardware side, but on the software side, it's pretty sweet. But the key is really the positioning and the brand. They're doing something nobody else is doing. Not even close. Another example is wellness tech. So it's another interesting product. So when this team came to us, they had, the founder is basically microelectronics PhD. He's been in the lab, he's done research, and he was developing this new sensor. Oh, that's a little bit better. He was developing this new sensor using fiber optic, low-cost fiber optic. Maybe can I get a handheld mic? It's a bit better. Sorry for, I think it would be better sound. It's okay, yeah. Is that okay? Yeah, that's better. So they created this sensor, flat, low-cost sensor using fiber optics that with basically simple contact can get biosignals such as your entire heart waveform and your breathing pattern, kind of medical grade things. And they were like, okay, we want to do a sleeping tracker. So we talked to them, said, we love your technology, we like your team. Sleeping trackers, is anybody succeeding at that? Is there any market for it? So it could be that nobody's done it right, but it could be also that there's a problem with sleep. The problem with sleep is that when you're asleep, you're asleep. You can't do anything. I give you data, you're sleeping. What are you going to do? You have to wait for the next day to do anything. So we said, how about you look at other situations where people are actually stationary and active? So they basically created the world's first sedentary health tracker. Basically a kind of tracker for your ass, right? And that positioning made them very, very different because there's this big trend around corporate wellness, all those talks around the fact that sitting is the new smoking, that's, it's like one of the disease of the century, and that it affects all parts of our brains and bodies. So thanks to that, they launched a crowdfunding campaign, went really well, and then they got inbound interest, even from hospitals, saying, oh, can you adapt that to, like, I don't know, my bed, so I can do monitoring of patients, and also call some companies like car manufacturers or airplane manufacturers, where, like, if we could know, the health condition of passengers, that would be fantastic, because we could either anticipate problems or service them better. So they're doing really well, just raised Series A. So it's not always working. So I thought I'd mention a couple of examples of things that actually are not quite working quite well in our portfolio. So, share that with you. And I call that the great tech trap. So it's basically when you get excited as an investor by your team because they have a fantastic looking tech, and you're like, oh, I'm sure we can find an application for it. And that's generally a bad start. So I'll share two examples. So you're probably familiar with this. So it's Boston Dynamics, the famous robot bully, right? So this is great tech. Google acquired this company for, I don't remember how much, but like hundreds of millions. They don't know what to do with it. Those robots are fantastic. They're just incredibly expensive, so they can't find a viable business application. So this is a company facing a great tech problem. And we had our own. So this company has no problem. This is the one that has good tech, shipping, doing robotic kits, modular things. And now this is the company that has problems. This one's called basically Cell Robotics. They make modular robots. So modular robots are research-grade type of things, like things you find at MIT, at EPFL, in the robotics labs, cost a fortune to make in the lab, and they still don't know what to do with it. Those guys, team from Beijing, they were like, we're going to make a great consumer modular robot. And they did it. So it works. It's fantastic. Except it's still a bit expensive. Like this full thing has lots of modules, about $500. Super advanced stuff. Normally it would be thousands or tens of thousands of dollars to make in the lab. The problem is that, what do you do with this? And we still don't know. It's an incredible thing if you want to play with a robot and discover robotics and modular robotics. It does like some interesting things. So, you assemble the modules, and then it works in a very strange way because you can assemble, depending on the way you assemble it, it moves differently. It's really, really sophisticated. So what do you actually do with it? I don't know. They tried to do a few examples like this one, feed the dog. It's not very precise. But so sometimes you have those companies. So fortunately, it's not just us who get excited. They actually raised follow-on funding from investors. And we hope they find applications, or that this can become like a popular toy, maybe. Maybe if it's in the next Star Wars movie, maybe it can be very popular. So this is one example. I have another example here. So you're all familiar with 3D printing. This one is a 3D printer that prints fabric out of liquid polymer, like polyester or even liquid silk. It uses an electric field of about 20,000 volts, enclosed, so that it's a little bit like weaving like a spider. It throws some kind of fiber on a mold, and then you get stuff like that. So you get seamless fabric. It's very, very interesting. It's like, solid R&D. Well, this company couldn't find a business. And at the moment, they kind of stalled because couldn't find what to do with their technology. So initially, everybody was excited. It was like, oh, you're going to, print a T-shirt. And they actually did that. They printed a T-shirt. But the T-shirt is not H&M quality, right? It's a prototype style T-shirt. So if you want to go to Burning Man, that's great. But otherwise in the street, less so. So this is the type of problems that what do you do with the technology? There's as much work finding applications as there is developing the technology itself. All right, step 3, prototype to product. So that's building things right, and that's why we're in Shenzhen. So I guess a number of you are familiar with that. Essentially, what we discovered moving here is that the supply chain is really a superpower. How much? 3 minutes? OK. So our teams coming to Shenzhen tell us that a week in Shenzhen is like a month anywhere else. You can get a PCB done in a day or two instead of 1 or 2 weeks. It costs a tenth of the price. If you want to do anything machine or 3D printed, you get it next door. It's really, really, really fast. Shenzhen moves at startup speed. So not only you gain time, which is very important because gaining time means getting to market faster, maybe 6 months, a year before competitors. And you get also access to the incredible amount of production skills and manufacturing skills of Shenzhen. Then, of course, you save money, you save, and you can scale from small scale to big scale. OK, so what essentially so far, Shenzhen was really kind of privileged garden, or like a secret garden of multinational companies. And if you wanted to do it yourself, it was really difficult. So what we try to do is kind of build in the middle some kind of a business class, kind of the API to China supply chain. On top of that, what we do, sorry, I'm going to go back on that one, is in our office, by getting everybody together, they cooperate, collaborate, support each other, and that also helps startups go much faster. OK. As you can see, they go very fast, move fast. Smart home. So I mentioned this one because this is an example of somebody who actually got that message. So the founder of this company called Minute used to work at Apple for about 8 years in those secret prototype labs in Cupertino. But then when he left Apple, he realized, OK, startups are not like Apple. And you don't have resources, you don't have time, you don't have people. So if you can leverage an ecosystem that can help you go much faster, you can save, like he estimates, about a year going to market. And he's shipping his product now. I just mentioned quickly a few others because I think I'm over time. So just to show the capacity of the supply chain to transform your company. So this is a company making an inventory robot for supermarkets. Fantastic team from Willow Garage, legendary startup in Silicon Valley. They couldn't find any money in the US. It's a US team from a great, great startup that graduated from it and decided to do their own. They couldn't find money because their product looked like an ugly prototype. Came to Shenzhen, created that fantastic looking thing, made a very nice video of it. So it goes around, scans things with like pure computer vision, so no barcode scanning, no NFC, no RFID. And that allowed them to raise money within 3 months. Sorry. So they raised money within 3 months after graduating. They got a pilot at Target. Once they got that, more investors came in. And now they have 10 robots cruising on alleys in Target. Another example of how you can leverage the supply chain. So you're all familiar with the Roomba. So if you do a Roomba today, it's probably a bit competitive market now. But nobody's doing this as a robot, right? They're still pushing around or driving around those things. So one team from Canada, great robotics engineers, came over, and they bought one of those things and turned it into a robot, autonomous. Got that thing going. They went back to the factory and showed it to the factory owner. And the factory owner looked at it and was like, this is the future of my business. Everybody else is going to go out of money, going to go out of business because they're all competing with the same thing. If we're the only one making this autonomous robot, we'll stay in business. So you can build on top of the supply chain. Oh, only step 3. Oh, that timing-wise is going to be a bit tight. So step 3, I think that was covered a lot by Ben from Indiegogo. There's things you can do with tech media, vertical media, mass media, Facebook ads. And recently, those are actually very effective. A bit of a mystery still, but the Facebook native media, like viral threads, Now This Future, Tech Insight, those who make like the short videos with like the big bold yellow text on your Facebook stream. You probably know those guys, right? Those do fantastic. They got millions of views on for some of our startups. And that's, so a number of them have done really well with crowdfunding. So that's our crowdfunding results. We have over 60 successful campaigns so far, 7 in the world top 100. So we got to build pretty good know-how on how to run that thing. I mentioned those guys. I'm going to advance. Just to mention, those guys, it's a seasonal product, a ski boot, ski tracker, ski coach. They decided to postpone their launch to be launching during the ski season so that the ski media would be more active. They participated in the ski trade show, and they got a lot of attention. They actually scored the highest Kickstarter for a sports product, a bit over 250K. Okay, so and the last step is scaling. So we built basically the program in San Francisco to help companies get in touch with retailers. And what we discovered is that for startups to get in touch with buyers, it's really difficult, first, to get in touch with them, and second, to convince them when you don't know what they expect. And startups come up, they show their thing, and they're like, OK, well, do you have all those paperwork ready? And the startups have no idea what you're talking about. So we decided to make this boot camp for them so that they can get ready for retailers. So it's really about you probably heard about product market fit, but there's also product retail fit, about this preparation on meeting buyers and being ready. The last part, and that's still a kind of tough one to crack, is how do you finance yourself as hardware startup? And that's not just for the first product, but also beyond that. How do you finance inventory? Because essentially, almost nobody wants to finance your inventory. VCs don't want to finance inventory. Banks, they look at your last year's sales. They can finance maybe 20% as a loan for the next year. But if you're growing fast, that's not enough. Customers, in some cases, but a lot of retailers, they prefer to pay you late than early. So it's still a challenge. And I think that's all I have. So yeah, if you have any question, ben@hacks.co or Benjamin Joffe on Twitter. Thank you very much.